Welcome back to the Paddocks, everyone. On this episode, we're going to be talking about a couple of our fave Formula One inspired movies and why we love them. On the episode, we have Melissa, Ito, Meg, and myself, Chelsea. And the first movie that we absolutely have to talk about, this one's my favorite. That's why we're starting with it. It's the classic Ford versus Ferrari.
It's definitely a good one, I must agree, Chels. So, Ford versus Ferrari is a 2019 American sports drama film directed by James Mangold. The movie is based on the true story of the rivalry between the American manufacturer Ford and Italian sports car maker Ferrari in the 1960s. The plot revolves around the efforts of Ford trying to build a car capable enough of beating Ferrari at the prestigious 24 hours Le Mans race. Carroll Shelby, played by Matt Damon, is a former racing driver turned automotive designer. He is enlisted by Ford to develop a car that can compete with Ferrari's dominant racing team during that time. Shelby recruits the British driver and engineer Ken Miles, portrayed by Christian Bale, to help him in the ambitious venture. And by the way, Christian Bale does a really great job in this film too. I love him as an actor, so that's pretty biased. Anyways, the film showcases the challenges and obstacles faced by Shelby and Miles as they battle corporate interference, technological hurdles, and personal conflicts. The narrative climaxes with the intense competition at the 1966 Le Mans race, where the Ford GT40, driven by Ken Miles, takes on the Ferrari team.
I'm just going to start us off. I love this movie. This was one of those movies, besides Speed Racer, when I was in elementary, that I used to love. That made me think I could be a race car driver, because I was like, if this hothead idiot could do it, I could do it, Because if you haven't seen the movie, the guy really is a hothead in the best ways. Ken Miles. But I just used to think the movie was so entertaining, and honestly, I'm not sure in comparison how accurate it is to the events, but I personally just really enjoy the storyline that they went with, so that's the one I'm gonna enjoy. But I think it was really good, and I really, really love Christian Bale in it so much. I'm also biased though.
The movie was my first exposure to Le Mans, so I just remember when I heard they first mentioned it, I just went on my phone. I'm those people when ever I watch a movie, I look up the cast and so little details. I always like to look up, and I was like, oh, this is actually no, but it was really cool to see the structure and how they separate the drivers, how each of them drive and rest in between, but it was also that nice. Of course, they add their drama for cinematic purposes, but it's always nice to see that added in. But it was really cool to I don't know, I appreciate the exposure to a whole different side of motor sports. So that's why I really liked it.
Yeah, honestly, I had never seen Ford versus Ferrari before we decided to do this episode. And so I went to watch it this past weekend in preparation, and I was surprised how good it was. I'm not a endurance race girly, not at all. But this actually got me invested. And now I'm I really need to start watching Beck races. And I mean, if a movie can convince you to start watching something like a sport or something, it's good.
One of my favorite scenes from that movie is when Ken Miles and his son are in the Ford dealership right when they announce the new Ford model, and Ken Miles or oh my god, Christian Bale, I can't believe I blanked on his name. He just totally sasses the guy from Ford and shuts him up with all his European knowledge about cars, and I'm like, you go off, Ken Miles. But I watched that movie with my mom, and it was just it was a really good movie. I cried. It was emotional, especially the ending. Really sad ending. Not gonna spoil anything. But it was, I don't know, it was a very good movie. And like Mel said, I hadn't really known much about Le Mans before this movie, and this movie made me want to get more into that type of racing and the endurance championship and things like that. So it's definitely a good watch. I highly recommend it because it's not really Formula One, but it's another form of racing that's still very popular and very relevant, and it's a huge huge battle between Ford and Ferrari that might make a comeback with Red Bull and Ferrari, could be relevant today.
That's so true, though, because actually, Red Bull just announced like a couple weeks ago their hypercar project. So we might actually see that happening. Who knows? And also, I mean, also feel like this movie is becoming more apropos because Ferrari won Le Mans again last year. So it's kind of a good movie. I mean, yeah.
I will say, speaking of just like the Ferrari winning and everything, I thought it was so funny in the movie how Ken Miles speaks in the sense of like how their car sucks. And there was people making memes that like that's how Lewis Hamilton is going to be when he steps onto the grid for 2025. And I'm just like, yes, he's gonna do exactly like Ken Miles. It's shit. Like you can't say that's Ferrari. It's shit. Like I can totally see Lewis doing that. And that's probably why they maybe hired him. So I do love those parts of the movie where like if that's real, if that is hilarious, that is legendary, and I'm so happy that it worked for them.
It's actually funny because the other movie we're going to talk about in this episode, one of the drivers said a very similar thing to Ferrari.
We have Megan, for some reason, having an EDM concert in her room right now. And you know what? This is how Ken Miles felt in the movie. Yeah.
She's probably jamming to that Max, 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 Super Max. That I know I do sometimes. In like my
No, because I'm not even kidding. On my walk to the train every morning, I blast that just to like get me mentally prepared
Is
for
that
my day.
like gets you in the zone?
Yes. It's so hard.
That makes sense.
Like, and my walk home from the train station, because it's just like a super, like, I don't know the degree, but the incline, oof, it's rough. So
Didn't Ken Miles have a hype song?
I feel like he did.
I feel like you have to as a driver, like just listen to that song that just like gets you hyped before like a race. Because like I don't know what I would listen to. I feel like my mood would change depending on where I am, but I feel like it's necessary.
So I mean, I feel like as a racing fan, you kind of, even like me, that is hardcore Ferrari till the day I die, that Max song, that gets me hyped every single time, and I'm low-key embarrassed.
If you know Spanish, Bad Bunny has a bunch of Formula One songs for you now, including Red Bull and Mercedes fans.
Monaco, great song. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Great one.
Fun fact: one of Bad Bunny's songs from the Verano Sin Ti album, he has this line in the Andrea song where he like compares life, how life goes fast, like Max in Formula One, and then he like does a mention to like someone who I think a NASCAR driver. I don't know who it is. I sometimes don't understand some Spanish, so I'm calling myself out. I'm not a Yo no Sabo kid. I just sometimes don't understand some accents. So I'm like, yeah, I can understand Verstappen in Formula Uno, but I don't know who it is. He just mentions a driver in Daytona, so I think it's cool when they do little things like that too.
I mean, I don't speak Spanish. I don't, but I did for a little. And I will say, just the way he sings, I don't know if it's slang or like what, but it's like almost like his accent. I don't know. But his songs are still fire. I love Bad Bunny. Like, I don't know. He's so great. I love that man. Especially Monaco with the old F1 engines in that song. Like, it's just like chef's kisses.
I think Ken Miles did Daytona in the movie. I don't remember what scene it was for though.
No, he did Daytona as like a test, as like to prove his point that he is allowed to race at Le Mans, because Ford didn't believe he could race endurance racing, or that he was too old or whatever. And he said, like, the deal, what Carroll Shelby made a deal with Ford, that if he won in Daytona, he was able to race them on.
I looked it up. Can confirm Ito's correct. Our little historian queen.
I mean, if you really loved Mr. Shelby, you can buy his car. There's a Ford Shelby, goes very fast, very pretty. You can get that car in fun colors and no one will judge you. It's like a Jeep. So keep that in mind.
For the low cost of $76,820. And this is for the 2022. So
That's
yeah,
not even the
this-
newest one.
It's not the so let's hold on. Yeah, it's about the dark horse starts at 65. Casual. Very casual. I feel some kind of way right now looking at that number, so we'll leave it at that.
It's actually funny. I knew of the Ford Shelby before I knew of Carroll Shelby.
I feel like that's with a lot of things, like, Ford before Henry Ford, and like Ferrari before Enzo Ferrari. People who made them famous and made them just don't get credit anymore. It's the big names.
Speaking of Enzo, I also like the little scenes when they had like the actor who was playing Enzo during that like era being there, because it's just like, I don't know, it's just like the little like I don't know, little moments like that where it's like you kind of think about what was going on behind the scenes with all that drama between each teams. And I don't know, I just like little Easter eggs whenever I see people playing Enzo.
And what's also funny to me on that note is because the movie Ferrari just came out and it roughly like it in like the timeline of Ferrari, it's set right before Ford versus Ferrari. And the actors look so similar to me. I was like, huh? And I was surprised how good that continuity, at least to me, it was. Because that's hard.
I will say, I like movies that make me want to like research more, which Ford versus Ferrari did. And I feel like as a Formula One fan, obviously we don't really see anything about American drivers because we're not in it. Now, okay, shout out to Logan, boy's doing his job, and that's great, awesome. But he's the only one there. And before him, I don't think there's one since like what, the 50s, 60s? I don't remember. So Ford versus Ferrari was very fun for me because it was like the Ford American company, and I'm very basic. I had a Ford car in high school. They were cheap. They are the Ford gimmick of fix or repair every other day is true. So do keep that in mind if you get in Ford. But it was very fun to like search up Ken Miles because I remember reading that he was like he started with like motorcycle racing, which I wish Hannah was here because that girl would probably know more than I do about it. But he was in motorcycle racing and he was in like a lot of not random races. Like he was already kind of making in the real world, not really in the movie. I feel like in the movie they ignore it, but like in the real world he was already kind of like making a name for himself before the whole Ford versus Ferrari thing. It was just the Daytona race is what like made him a superstar, I guess is like the word that I'm gonna use. But it was just really interesting to like learn about that because he kind of had like this little career before the whole Ford thing. And I don't know, it's kind of fun to like learn about Ford too. We talk a lot about Formula One, and obviously there's like a lot of other motorsports out there. So it's also fun to learn about Le Mans because if you go on our social media, we talk about it, but we never like talk about it on our podcast.
I also like seeing how they start off races, how they like run over to the cars and then get in and then drive off, because like I don't know about you guys, but me, if I was them, I would have messed that up. I would have tripped and fell. Not even made it to the car. I would have stumbled and then made it and set my team up for failure. So it's funny to like think about stuff like that because like I don't know about you guys, but whenever like I watch movies like this, I'm like, how would I be in this situation? Like, what kind of athlete would I be? And I'm like, I probably wouldn't be the best.
Yeah, I mean, that just shows that even though it's technically just quotation marks, driving cars, it is still a sport. Because what if a driver fell running to his car? He would lose precious, precious time.
And it's not only that, but like even how they show in the film, like what like you have to stay up like all those hours and like strategically like plan out like the driver's schedule and everything. So like of course, thank God there's 3 drivers now, I think it is, that they switch between. So it's like obviously they do it in shifts, but still that takes a toll on your body because you're not getting the amount of sleep that you should get when you typically should be getting it. So it's just it's a lot. I can just imagine how like physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically exhausted these drivers are afterwards.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't want to say it makes Formula One look easy, but it kind of does. Because, I mean, they race for what? 3 hours max? No, 2 hours max. It races max 3 hours, but a max of total racing time is 2 hours. So 24 compared to 24 hours, damn.
I mean, if you're listening, like, spoiler, we're talking about a movie everyone's seen that's very old, so I just want to talk about the ending. I just want to say, like, it was really well done. It wasn't very dramatic. It wasn't very, like, this show or whatever. The way they did it really made you sad. I remember I cried. I was like, oh my God, like, what the is this? Because, you know, at the time I know nothing about Ken Miles. Like, that's why I was watching the movie. And it's very sad. It kind of, for a moment, reminds you of, like, a moment that could have happened to, like, Grosjean when he had the accident, you know, the man on fire. And it's moments like that where, like, you know, this guy never even got to make it to Formula One. Like, that was, he didn't even really want to. There's, like, an interview where he's like, I would love to drive a car. He doesn't really care about winning. He just thought it would be fun. Um, Actually, in his words, it would be jolly good fun, which I thought was hilarious. But seeing that the way he went out, it's also a little bit like a Paul Walker moment. Like, this was a man that was happy to go out doing what he was doing. I think it's a little sad that it happened in front of his child. But I don't know. It's like, it's a very dramatic way to pass away. But for someone that, like, dedicated his life to it, I was like, well, it's also probably the best way for you. And I think supposedly it was, like, instant. I don't think he, like, suffered. I think the accident was instant and then the car did the thing.
I'm looking it up right now. So it says online, the car was going down back straight at top speed of over 200 miles per hour, 320 kilometers per hour, when the car has suddenly flipped, crashed, and caught fire, and ultimately the car had like broken into pieces and ejected Niles, and ultimately, instantly, he had passed. Rest in peace. That was actually really tough to say out loud. So yeah,
It's very sad. Like, these careers, anything really in motorsport, all of the careers in motorsport, whether they're driving a motorcycle, in NASCAR, in, like, even e-driving, everything is just, it's not safe. They risk it. They do it happily, most of them. Like, they're going into this car, they know what they're doing. It's not like anyone's being forced to get into these cars. But it's just kind of like, we as fans, I don't think a lot of us realize that. Like, we just think it's very entertaining to see them drive. And then when, like, Lando gets in an accident because of the rain, or like Grosjean got into the fire accident, which, by the way, has happened to the guy twice now because it happened to him in another series. So I don't know what that's about. But anyways, these people, like, are risking it every time they get into the car. And then we watch movies like this, and again, we're like, oh, it's a movie, but it's not. Like, this is based off a real story. This actually happened to, you know, a dude that was only 47 when he passed. So I do also like that the movie brings attention to, like, something that most people would not have really thought to think about again, because this happened so long ago. And they thought the story was important enough, at least to Americans, because it is about Ford at the end of the day, to, like, bring to the community. And I do love that Netflix, as much as we make fun of, like, DTS and stuff, I do love that Netflix makes series like the NASCAR one that they just did. And that Amazon has like the Indy. I think it's Amazon that has Indy. And we also have obviously DTS, which if you're listening, most of us watch. So yeah, sure, it's funny, like haha, they're all on TV, blah blah. But it's like I like that we're bringing attention to a sport where these people are risking their life every day for it.
And I feel like also with like these older biopics, like and then you compare it to racing now, you see this safety progress that has been made. And that's just also beautiful to see in my eyes. And that definitely is worth highlighting too. Because I feel like a lot of newer fans don't know or forget that it used to be that oftentimes, say, 24 drivers started a season like in the 70s, and at least 2 of them died per season.
I mean, going off that, we can talk about our second movie, which is Rush, which again, fan favorite for the Paddock girls over here.
Amen. I mean, it's the movie that really truly got me back into Formula One in, I want to say 2013, 2014. But so, what is it about? So, Rush is a 2013 biographical sports drama directed by Ron Howard that focuses on the, at the time, very intense rivalry between the Brit James Hunt and Niki Lauda during 1976. James Hunt is portrayed by Chris Hemsworth and is a charismatic, playboyish British racer known for his bold, daring driving style. On the other hand, though, you have Niki Lauda, played by Daniel Brühl, and who's a very methodical and disciplined, almost stereotypical Austrian driver who approaches racing with meticulous precision. And the story unfolds as both Hunt and Lauda compete for the championship. And the film actually explores their contrasting personalities to an extent already pre-Formula One, but mainly focuses on Formula One and how their two personalities clash on and off the track, and highlights a few pivotal moments that, for example, occur when Lauda suffers a life-threatening crash at the German GP, resulting in severe burns, and that whole trajectory, what happens after and with the season, but also with Lauda himself. And ultimately, the movie culminates in the final race in Japan, and we just see what happens. But to me, what makes this movie truly beautiful is that at the end of the day, you still have this undertone of mutual respect by the two drivers, which is amazing. And actually, because Lauda was still alive when the movie came out, he actually said that the movie was about 80% accurate, which for a Hollywood movie is pretty good, I feel like.
I watched this movie probably a few months ago, so it's like really fresh in my head, and I absolutely loved it. And I really liked how they broke down Lauda's like mind and how he thought as a mechanic and as an engineer, and how that helped Ferrari's car development even further. Because I'm like, ha ha ha, thinking about the team now, I'm like, we kind of need possibly some influence like that. I'm not looking at anyone right now because it's okay, but maybe we can get some behind the scenes there. But I think it's just like really important because like he really felt how the car was and what needed to be done. And like was mentioned earlier, there is that iconic scene where Lauda drives the car for the first time, and like I think it's his engineer. Someone's like, "How was it?" And he was like, "It's a shit box." And he's like, "But it's a Ferrari." He's like, "Yeah, it's a shit box." Like, it doesn't matter. But it was the same thing, the same meme where it's like Lewis the first day when he drives like the Ferrari F1 car, like in 2025. It's like maybe he will be that guy because we know he loved him some Nicky Lauda too when they worked together in Mercedes and everything. But I think that's what I really liked about the story. Just how they showed how Lauda's mind worked and how like influenced the team, but also like James Hunt, how they did it too. Like his part, like his whole like personality, like being like that kind of like I don't want to say obnoxious, but like that playboyish, like over the top, like very like everyone likes me. You have to like me type style. And it's like I kind of like appreciated that. So it was a lot of fun. And I think it's just funny how it was like two main actors from like the Marvel universe. If you guys know, besides Thor, our other guy played a fun villain that appears later on in the series. So, little fun fact. I forgot the name, but I love that character in the Captain America series. So, yeah.
I made the mistake of watching Rush and the Schumacher documentary both in the same night. Um, and that was my first time watching both. Um, so it was a fun night to say the least, but I honestly like just movies in general. To me, Rush is one of my like all-time favorite movies, period. I don't know why. It's just the way it was filmed and just the story of it. I just love it so much. And kind of like everyone has mentioned so far, both Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl they played both characters like insanely well, and I don't know, it just felt like you were really there during that time period in that movie, especially since like James Hunt only raced for like a very limited amount of time. Like dude won and said I'm out, like bye. Um so the fact that like a movie was even made about him in the first place is crazy in of itself. I think that's right. But I don't know, it's just I feel like that's almost like kind of like a little foundation for where motorsport movies have come from a little bit. Just I don't know, but I just love that movie so much. It has a special place in my heart.
I will say, I realize now I might have confused a scene from Ford versus Ferrari and Rush because I watched both of them this past weekend for this episode. Um, but anyways, I always thought it was really interesting how. Okay, so I think the movie was made mostly because of the rivalry. It wasn't really specifically because of like how amazing they drive, which they do. They drive amazing. But what was amazing was like their relationship. And I really think if there's someone I would maybe possibly slightly compare to him is Max, and like how Max understands the Red Bull car and just the cars in general. Like we think it's funny, but Max will literally be driving and he can tell you what car's behind him just by listening. And he can tell you who's going into the pit, who's turning, who's braking, and he's just listening. He's not even watching anything, you know? And and I'm going to assume that trickles into other ways that he probably works with the car that we just don't see. And it also reminds me of Sebastian Vettel, who we all laugh, but is an inspector. You know, like he can look at cars and figure things out, and he can hear them and kind of like read and listen for things. So it's really interesting because it's fun to see that kind of every generation of Formula One has that driver. And I think there's also always kind of like that rivalry. I don't know where that rivalry is right now this season, to be honest. But, you know, at some point we had Mercedes, and we obviously have had like other little tiffs with like Matt and Checo. You know, we kind of tried to compare them. I also think the media just kind of tries to make these rivalries for us instead of them actually being there. And I think it's really fun to see how they portrayed their relationship because I don't think the movie made it dramatic. I don't think so. I think they could have made it so much more dramatic, and they really did keep it to like his logical attitude and James Hunt like party attitude. Like I feel like they were portrayed pretty well to how the real news clips looked back then on like TV, which I love to see on movies, because if I'm watching a movie, I want to learn. I don't want to get drama.
Their relationship very much to me gives like playboy jock versus like not nerd, but like I don't want to sound mean, but like you know what I'm saying, like the typical like unexpected duo that end up hating each other and then becoming really good friends. So I don't know. I feel like they nailed it really well. And I'm also speaking of McLaren, I just saw this on my Twitter right before we were filming this, that they have started filming the Senna documentary for Netflix, and I am so excited for that because I have been trying to watch the Senna movie for so long and it's not available in the US. So, unless someone wants to send that to me, greatly appreciate it. But I will wait. But speaking of McLaren, because you know, James Hunt and McLaren, but I don't know. And I think they really, like we've been talking about, and like Chelsea just said, like, I don't think they made it dramatic at all, their relationship and their characters, just because of what I've read about James and Nikki. It's very much like what you would expect. And the one scene from the movie that honestly, it like disturbed me a little bit. I don't know if you guys will agree with this, when they were sucking the stuff out of Nikki when he was in the hospital, like sucking all the blood and the yeah, that one scene, I was like, I don't know if we needed this, but I guess it adds to the what everything that he went through, because it was pretty incredible that he was able to do all that and get back in the car eventually and race. Like, Mans is a legend.
Amen. And I mean, so I'm gonna date my parents here, but basically they grew up when they were racing, the two, especially my dad, and he actually was the one to put me onto the movie Rush back in like 2013. And afterwards I would talk to him about it, and he would actually send me like scans of old news clippings about those two, and like comparing those news clippings at the time to how the movie portrayed it. They're insanely spot on, and it was not it would like their rivalry, so to speak, was not dramatized in the news back then, nor was it in the movie. And to a person now, where the news media oftentimes sensationalizes every single little thing, like when we thrive off that as a society, is just very interesting to see. How it used to be just information, whereas now it's drama.
I will say, I do love that the movie Rush also kind of covers like issues that are still in Formula One, like racing in the rain. You know, the first thing for me that comes to mind is like Lando when he spun out and like he was saying like he didn't even want to be in the car. And it sucks because, yeah, like as fans, we're excited sometimes for like wet races. Some people are like, okay, cool, it'll be interesting, blah, blah, blah. And valid, I understand, because a lot of drivers have to show more skill in wet races. And it is interesting to see like how they overcome it and etc. But at the end of the day, that's also extremely unsafe. Like they are 100% risking it for the biscuit the second they are on that wet track. And sometimes they're not even on the right tires because the teams refuse to put them on the right tires because they're like, the rain's going to leave quickly. And it's like, okay, but that one lap where the rain is here can be the lap that like screws them over. And I think it's very unfair sometimes how the FIA treats them during those wet races where they don't even take into consideration the driver's feelings. And we see that in the movie Rush, in I think it was the Japanese Grand Prix. And Hunt finished the race. That was the race that got Hunt the championship. But Lauda basically gave it to him because Lauda was like, have fun racing in the rain. Like, that's not, my life isn't worth a championship. And Hunt at that time I think just really needed to prove something. And he was also probably still feeling kind of guilty because it was his fault that Lauda, not his fault directly, obviously, everything's a racing accident, but he felt like it was his fault that Lauda got screwed over with the fire. So Hunt finished the race. He did it. And I think that actually might attribute to one of the reasons he never needed another championship, to be honest. Like, I basically risked my life for the last one. I don't think I need to do that again. And it's interesting to see that Lauda was a racer that, like, retired. Like, he said, screw it. He didn't care what the FIA thought at the time. He's like, you guys can keep the race going. I get it. You sold the broadcasting rights to everyone. So, like, you have to do it because of money. But screw you guys. It's not going to cost my life. And it's sad that we still haven't really found a way to keep the racers safe besides, obviously adding some more precautions onto the cars, but we're still making them go out there.
Yeah, honestly, I hate wet races so much. Like, for example, Japan 2014, that race was the worst race I ever saw. And I I get why wet races are interesting, but at the same time, when it's too wet, the FIA just needs to get their shit together. Because, as Chelsea said, it's not worth someone's life.
I always think back to Japan 2022 with the incident with Pierre and the lack of visibility in the tractor, because it's just like, I get the circumstances and everything, but at the same time, I'm always just like, come on now. Like, how many times does something need to happen for someone to do something again? Like, it's always like, and then I just remember like everyone being upset, like him being upset about like, he got like points on his license and everything, right? Yeah. And I remember that was like the whole thing where like he was like at his max and like there was all that drama, and I was just like, he genuinely, like, his friend passed away from a crash. I doubt he wants the same thing happening to another friend of his, let alone himself. So it's like, of course, he's gonna feel some type. I totally get that anger, and I still, every time I like the Japanese GP comes around, I kind of get like low key PTSD because I'm like, please don't rain because I don't want anything happening.
And the contract just got extended.
But I think
So-
they're doing it earlier in the season because the time of year they usually do it around, it's like monsoon season for them in Japan. So they're trying to like.
That would be
do
much
that.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and they moved to Australia.
Yeah, this year they're bunching together China, Japan, and Australia at the beginning of the year.
Hell yeah, 3 a.m. race times.
At least then we can get it over and done with.
True.
But like, it's not convenient because that's when I'm in school, and like, I'm not gonna be able to stay up until 3 a.m. on. Wait, no, because it'll be Saturday. Actually,
It'll
wait,
be
what am
3
I
a.m.
saying?
Sunday morning.
What am
so
I
we'll be
saying?
good.
I'll be fine. Ignore
We'll
what
take
I was saying.
we'll take naps on Sunday, Meg. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. But I was also gonna say, like, another track is Spa, and I know people like love Spa because of the history of it, but it is one of the most dangerous tracks still on the F1 grid to this day. Like, we literally just lost someone last year, or as recent as last year at that track. Antoine almost lost Lando at that track. Like, it's another one where it's just it's not worth it. Like, it's not worth their safety. So yeah, Spa, not a great place, but one that remains on the calendar because you have all of the fans that are like, oh, like I was saying, history, history, history. I'm sorry, but history isn't worth people's lives. It's not worth these guys' lives. Like, yeah, they make money, a lot of money to provide entertainment, but at the same time, like, that doesn't give anyone any right to say their lives are worth less than anyone else's because they're entertainers. Like, at the end of the day, like, we all of us have mentioned, I'm pretty sure in this episode, they're putting their lives at risk every single time they step into that car. Every single time. Like, I think it was Christian Horner who said it on DTS one of the seasons. He's like, you have to have like a fighter pilot mentality. Like they're like fighter pilots every time they get into those cars. So I don't know, just wet races and don't like them at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's reasons why certain countries, like Switzerland, have banned any type of motor racing within their borders because it's just super dangerous and people don't want to deal with that, even if it is fun to watch.
And I think also it's not only just the drivers, but I also think back to like Joe's accident where thank God, thank whoever anyone believes in that the car did not flip into over the barricade and into that grandstand, because there was a point where I was really worried that was going to happen, like once he stopped sliding and started flipping. And just I'm getting goosebumps just like remembering like that image of like how smushed that car was and everything. But like all I think about is just like not only the car but it's like the debris. Those things go flying. We have effing tires flying off sometimes, and they can just go anywhere, and we know how fast these drivers go, so we can just imagine how fast these pieces parts are flying. And oh, it's just God forbid.
So I can speak to that
Oh God.
personally. Although it wasn't a major crash, when me, Chelsea, and Leanne were in Miami, the both times Charles had crashed, it was in the marina section, which is where we were sitting. But the second time, he literally crashed right in front of us, and that wasn't to the nearly the extent of Joe's crash, but literally would wipe my face and it would be all black just from like all the debris and stuff. Like you could feel it like go boom, like right in like the gravel, like the carbon fiber, whatever, all the pieces of the car and the tire. So I can't even imagine what it must have felt like for the fans and spectators with Joe's crash. But another one that I was thinking of, it's not F1, but how do you say his name? Jan Mardenborough? Martin, the guy from the who was the PlayStation player
Gran
for
Turismo.
Gran Turismo. Yes, another motorsport movie. His accident actually killed a spectator, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen his accident, but it is definitely one of the most scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life. So I don't know. It's just, and like Ito mentioned before, they definitely have made extreme moves and upgrades in safety over the years. Unfortunately, due to things like that have happened to Nikki and other drivers, which is sad that it's had to happen. But I don't know. It's crazy. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, we're only talking F1 right now. Like, there are other racing series where safety is way laxer. Like, I can't remember which racing series it was, but I saw these pictures on Twitter like maybe 10 days ago where teams were working in the grandstands. And even just that, like they were literal people sitting on their laptops, like with their headsets on, like phoning into their pits or whatever you want to call it. And to me, that just screams danger.
But on the flip side, I do like seeing how the old cars look back then. And I kind of miss it, just like the iconic like 90s, like 80s F1 cars. There's just something about the old. Don't get me wrong, I love the new ones. They could add a little bit more color. Cough, cough. I'm looking at everyone so far right now for the 2024 season. That's another conversation for a different day. But I like the style. I don't know. It's just something about that old school F1 car. Just love it.
They need to be like IndyCar. They've got the colorful liveries right now that aren't just carbon fiber. Like look at McLaren. So far, both of their cars have been not just carbon fiber. Although I do love the new McLaren livery this year. I do love it. But I do have a question for all the girls here. What is your guys' favorite all-time motorsports movie? Is it one of the two we discussed today? Or is it something completely different? I'm curious.
Cars,
Which
flat
one?
out.
1, 2, 3. Which one?
The first one. The
So
first
the
one.
one without Lewis. The one without
Lewis.
Lewis.
I love the second one with that little scene, but I love that first one just because of that epic. We only follow the Ferraris. That's all. Just love that scene. No, that's actually like one of my favorite ones. So, but other than that, I like Fast and Furious, the OG ones. I don't really care for the newer ones if you want to count that. But I'm kind of new to like the motorsports like movie world. So, but Cars, yeah, Cars, Lightning McQueen, love that dude.
I mean, honestly, for me, it's kind of tough because on one hand, I'm like history buff through and through, so I would have to say like Rush or the Schumacher documentary because both made me bawl my eyes out. But at the same time, I like can appreciate like for example, as Mel said with the whole Cars, I only follow the Ferraris or that scene in was it the first Cars movie where Michael voiced the car that went into the auto shop to say Lightning McQueen said they have the best tires. Like that scene also. Oh my god. Granted, I only saw Cars very recently for the first time, so I don't have that childhood attachment to it. Yes, guys. No, don't
Same,
look so
No
shocked.
comment. No comment.
same here, Ito. I just watched it
Do
like a
not
few
look
months
so
ago.
shocked, ladies.
I have a
Please.
childhood attachment to Cars.
I mean,
Heavily.
I'm also a lot younger than, not a lot, but I am younger than you guys. So like, I feel like it is part more of my like childhood.
I am 20. How old am I?
I
I'm
didn't say
27.
I took
And I
back
have
the
an
a lot.
attachment. I have an attachment to that movie.
I'm
I
the
took
oldest,
back
so
the
I'm
a
not gonna
lot.
say anything. So
I'm the youngest, and we all
But
know that.
the problem is, I don't know if my favorite movie is considered a motorsport movie, but my favorite like movie that has to do with cars and like racing and all that shit. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. It's Speed Racer, the live action. I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. I don't. You know what? It's beautiful. This movie is absolutely beautiful. It is so colorful. It is so like it keeps you captivated the whole time you're watching. I love the storyline. I was in love with like Speed when I was a child. I was like, I want to be Trixie and own a helicopter and shit. And it is literally just one of my all-time favorite race movies. Like to this day, I have seen this movie more than 100 times. To this day, if you put that movie on and sit me in front of it, I will watch it like it's my first time. And I will be just as shocked at the ending. Like, are you seeing this?
I shit you not, Chelsea. I literally was trying to watch that movie the other day. I was trying to find it on every platform, but I had to pay money for it, and I was like,
Yes. You have
I'm
to
not
rent it
paying
on
money.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not paying. I don't know if I want to watch it.
I
that
bought it at
much.
Walmart for $5. That is my recommendation for a lot of old movies. Just go to the $5 bin at Walmart.
Now that you mentioned that movie, I don't know whether it was a thing in the US, but it probably was because it was a Lindsay Lohan movie. But Herbie Fully Loaded. Anyone seen that movie?
Big fan. Big fan.
Such a good movie.
to this day, I still want a punch buggy.
I loved that movie so much. I mean, also my
Lindsay.
childhood was also Lindsay Lohan. Like she was in every Disney movie. So
Same.
like,
Love her.
also
a queen.
another one. I don't know if you count this as motorsport, but like they did have a whole little montage of racing at the beginning of the movie. It's an old one. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Have you guys ever seen that movie?
Stop.
I've
Oh my
heard
God,
of that.
wait.
I feel like maybe I've seen it.
Because there's a whole racing montage, and the whole thing about the car is that it's an ex-race car that's now like a family car that flies. Like, how you chitty chitty bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, we love you. Hi chitty low, chitty 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 bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang, you bang bang, chitty chitty bang bang.
I'm
Na,
keeping
na,
this
na,
in the
na, na.
episode.
Like you've never seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? I was afraid of the child kidnapper dude. I
So
had
I've seen
nightmares.
it, but I just wanted you to do that.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I know there's probably like a listener out there that's probably like my favorite racing movies, Talladega
That's literally what I was
Nights,
about to say.
Forty Ricky Bobby.
Shake
Really
and
close to
bake.
last.
I literally was Ricky Bobby for Halloween. How did I forget Talladega Nights? Ricky Bobby. Ricky Bobby.
We're so off base now.
Sorry.
I love it when we go like that, though.
Yeah.
All right, and thanks for joining us in the paddock with our PGP movie review. What are your thoughts on both films or any other motorsports film? Let us know at our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. And also, don't forget to share, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Catch you next time in the paddock. Bye.
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 Bye. Say bye, Willow. Bye.